Hello, everybody, and welcome to What It Takes to Be a Successful Woman in Business. This is our penultimate online event of 2021 and the ninth in the latest What It Takes Alumni Speaker Series, organised by the Alumni Relations team. And this event is in partnership with our Creative Enterprise Centre as well. So first up, just to introduce myself, my name is Laura and I manage the Alumni Relations Office at the University of Westminster. We are the team that keep in touch with you once you graduate. We work with hundreds of our alumni every year to support our students and recent graduates through programmes like this, What It Takes, as well as our mentoring programme and things like Westminster Working Cultures. Before I move on to introduce our wonderful panellists tonight, I've got a few housekeeping things to run through. So the first is that this talk is being recorded and the recording will be available on the Alumni YouTube channel very soon. Once this is ready, we'll send you the link to the channel as well as some useful resources in a follow-up email after tonight. Your cameras and microphones are automatically turned off, but the live chat is on and the group chat is there for you to ask any questions to tonight's speakers. So please do be encouraged to use that. But we'll also be collating your questions through the talk and then I'll put these to the panel after the main discussion. But if you would prefer to raise a question with one of the moderators of this event instead, then you can do that. And if you are receiving any of those annoying notification pop-ups or noises on Blackboard Collaborate, you can just navigate to and turn off these notifications via your settings. I'm sure you're all quite familiar with Blackboard Collaborate, but for those who aren't, just click on the purple button and then look at the sort of white arrows, the bottom right of your screen to alter your notification settings. So, I am going to move on to introducing our panel members tonight. I also do need to say that you might have been expecting to see Nikki Hayden hosting tonight's event. Unfortunately, she's not very well, so you've got me instead, Laura. I hope that's all right with you all. Tonight, our two wonderful panellists are going to tell us about their career journeys and their experiences in business up to the present moment. They're going to share their perspectives on gender diversity in business. And then we'll tap into the wisdom of our panel by inviting them to share some practical skills and tips and advice with us all. There will also be some resources shared around before we move on to a question and answer session. So, without further ado, if I could please pass over to our panellists to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with you, Michelle. If you could introduce yourself, what you studied at Westminster, and your current occupation, please.
Hi, Laura. I'm hoping that you can hear me.
Yeah, perfectly. Yeah, we can't see you, but
yes. My video was working fine up until a minute ago, and now I seem to be having a little bit of difficulty getting you to see me. So maybe you could move on to Emily, and then I will try to get back onto you shortly.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, okay. Emily, over to you.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Eby, and I did a master's in interior design at the University of Westminster, which I now believe is an interior architecture program. And I graduated in 2019, and I am now the founder of Nua Design, which is an online interior design business.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Emily. And then if I could go to Marwa, please.
Hello. Can you hear me and see me?
Yeah, and I can now see Michelle as well. So Marwa, yeah, carry on, and then we'll be good to go to Michelle. Yeah.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Okay, I'm gonna introduce myself. I cannot hear you, but let me introduce myself. So hello everyone. My name is Marwa, and I did a master's degree in entrepreneurship at the University of Westminster, and I graduated in 2019. And I am now running my own business, and it is Yalla Halal. And Yalla Halal is an online platform for delivering authentic halal food for Muslim and authentic food lovers in the UK. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. And we can all hear you perfectly well.
I can't hear you, so I'm gonna log out and come again.
So we'll move over to you, Michelle, please.
Okay, hi, Laura. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Well, it's evening in your neck of the woods. I'm Michelle Charles. I graduated from the University of Westminster in 2006. It's a very long time ago, with an MA in International Business and Management. Currently, I am employed as the Permanent Secretary in the Department of Education, Innovation and Gender Relations in St. Lucia, a lovely Caribbean island. And in my line of work, I mean, it's quite intense, but I have responsibility for matters relating to education, innovation, gender relations. And I also manage a small business consultancy, which I set up some time ago.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michelle, and welcome to all three of you. Hopefully Marwa's sound issues will get sorted. I think we can all hear her, but she can't hear us. So what we'll do is we're going to kick off with our first question for all of you tonight. And I'm going to put this first to you, Emily, please. So first up, a bit about the realities and the demands of a career in business. Business is a really broad term. Each of you run or own or lead a business in different ways. So Emily, could you first tell us a little bit more about what your role involves on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, sure. So I started an online business and have grown it now. So I have a business partner as well. And we work with a team of contractors and freelancers. So my day-to-day changes quite frequently and goes anywhere from actually doing design work myself, managing the designers that we work with, managing all of our supplier and third-party relationships, liaising with my business partner to work on all aspects of strategy and operation in the business. And yeah, kind of getting into all of the nitty-grits of things. We're more of a small business, so anything from the financial projections, reporting, bookkeeping, working on our Instagram, yeah, all of it pretty much, ordering products for clients, dealing with customer service issues. So right now my day-to-day is very, very broad and heavily involved in all aspects of business.
Thank you. And moving to you, Michelle, can you relate to that? What is your work like? What does it bring for you on a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis, I find myself pretty much engaged in government business. Say 90% of the time it's government business. And the other 10% of the time I spend doing, family and the small consultancy that I mentioned. But on average, I would say my day-to-days are very hectic. Because you could well imagine, especially managing a department the size of the one that I do in this COVID environment, exactly how crazy it could be. So I found myself on many occasions on a daily basis leading a number of Zoom meetings, those virtual meetings, meeting with my team to discuss what happens in education in this current time, working with my other departments. It's also the end of the financial year currently, so we're putting our budgets together. So I find myself very active doing a number of things. And also there are the everyday operational matters that need to be attended to. And I find myself involved in this. Sometimes I'm on the ground with my staff, and other times just leading the team towards accomplishing the various goals that we would have set ourselves.
It does certainly sound like a huge variety and to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Marwa, are you there? If not, what we'll do is I'm going to move on to another questions put to you both, Emily and Michelle, and then hopefully Mar will be able to join us again shortly. So next up, I want to ask if you can trace back to how you found yourself doing what you do now. So was there a sort of key pivotal moment that paved your journey to this point? Emily, if I could go to you, please.
Sure. So I have never properly studied business. When I did, my background has always been in creative fields, and I originally studied textile design in the States and worked in that industry as a woven upholstery designer for 5 years. And so I've always enjoyed the product development process and ideating, coming up with new ideas. I found myself in previous roles always thinking about process improvements and the operations of anything I was doing within a team, and did know that one day I wanted to try something on my own and try to start something. So when I completed my master's, it seemed like an excellent time to kind of take that leap. It was a transitional period of my life and seemed like an opportune moment to take a risk and finally try something by myself.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And Michelle, over to you.
For me, I found myself at this point, to some extent, I would say by accident initially, because when I graduated from secondary school or high school, as it's referred to in some parts of the world, what I really wanted to do was meteorology, fly into the eyes of hurricanes and stuff like that. And then after doing my first degree, I ended up being transferred to the Ministry of Communications at the time as an accountant. And what I can say is that accounting had never been my forte. It's not something that I ever enjoyed. It has a language all of its own. And I think for me, that was the pivotal point, the transition point for me to get me to where I'm at. Because when I moved from meteorology into mainstream public service as an accountant, I then had the opportunity to start managing and supervising people, and also to recognize various skills about myself, traits that I had that were probably dormant while I worked as a Met officer. Because knowing that I never liked accounting, I mean, when I was told I was moving into that field, I actually went to my friend's office and cried. And deciding then I don't like failure and I like to give good quality work. So I had to make the effort to embrace the tasks that were provided to me and to rise above that. So I think at that point, I started recognizing the strength in self and honing my skills as a manager supervisor. So this was the pivotal point for me, moving from being an operational field public servant into mainstream supervision and developing the requisite skills that would allow me to move and hold the position that I currently do.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to move on to the next question between the two of you, because I think it appears Mar was still not quite with us, but hopefully will be soon. So often when we reflect on careers, or we're asking inspirational leaders like yourselves to talk more reflectively, we often ask about challenges and mistakes or sort of problem moments that might have been pivotal to the success that we see now. So with that in mind, I wonder if I can ask you, what have been the most challenging moments or aspects of your career so far? And then I'm going to come to a more positive question after that. So if I could go to you first, Emily, to share some of the more challenging aspects of your career and your journey to date.
I think the most challenging things for me have been when I've taken a leap of faith and kind of taken a risk to make a change, and not knowing what would come of it and the certainty of what would be next if you would succeed. So I guess it was challenging, but to me, I also find I'm a risk taker. I really enjoy going towards that aspect of success, and I'm not afraid to approach failure, I guess. So I think the challenges just come with dealing with the uncertainty with the choices that you make. I am quite a positive optimist myself too, so I think sometimes I struggle to think of what the true challenges are. But yeah, just kind of accepting the risks you're taking and what will come of them, and sitting in the decisions that you've made. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And over to you, Michelle. Could you share what have been some of your more challenging moments in your career so far?
For me, I would think it was, well, probably the most challenging for me was transitioning from meteorology into mainstream public service, going into accounting, something that I never liked. But having moved past that, I think the challenges really stemmed from managing people, especially when I got into a department where the persons were more senior to me in terms of age, that managing older people, and persons who had been in the positions, well, in the departments for a very long time and perceived as coming in from the outside and being their supervisor manager. So these are the two main aspects that I figure to be some of the most challenging times as a manager or in my field.
And I'd like to now flip to some of the more sort of positive, reflective moments. So what have been, if you could, it might be a few moments, it might be something very specific, but what have been the most rewarding and enjoyable moments of your career so far? And Emily, if I could go to you for that, please.
So I think being in quite an early stage of a business and a smaller business, that our small wins feel huge at times. So, when we landed the first client that wasn't a friend of a friend, and when we, got our first couple of really good customer reviews, and, you have an amazing experience with a client who ends up being a big client who's very pleased with all the work you do in the end. So I think for us, kind of really taking the time to appreciate the small wins has been amazing. And then I would also say feedback and appreciation from people that have seen New Design grow from the very start has been really amazing, just to see what people have to say who've seen it from the seed to what it is now, essentially.
And how about you, Michelle?
For me, some of the most rewarding aspects of my job stem from noting the impact when the decisions that I make have a positive impact on the lives of other persons. For me, it's just a joy to watch. And also when I see my staff, because I'm one of those leaders who believe in empowering staff, empowering the people that I work with, guiding them and inspiring them. And so when I see my staff growing and attaining the goals that they have set for themselves, be it whether it's in education, getting a promotion that is well deserved, developing their, having a sound work ethic. For me, this is, I feel very proud, and I really want to think, for me, this is one of the most rewarding times. Also, when I know that I'm able to convince my team to do something that they had not previously thought of. Because in my department, there are many people. I supervise over 2,000 employees. And many of them have been in this system for a very long time and set in their ways. So coming in and convincing them to re-engineer a process, to do something differently, to consider something else, and they embrace it and the result is successful, for me, this is a very rewarding accomplishment as well.
I can't even imagine what it must feel like to supervise 2,000 people.
Well, I don't supervise all of them directly, thank God for that, because the majority of them are teachers, so there is somebody else responsible, but the overall responsibility for the ministry and for the work that happens falls within my office.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing those insights to start us off. We just so that all of our guests here are aware, Marwa is still unable to join the event, but the sound was working okay on a test run earlier, but it seems that she's still having some audio problems. So behind the scenes, we are trying to sort that out with her. So we're gonna carry on, and I can see that as Emily and Michelle, you've been sharing your answers there. I can see some questions that have been popping up by those who are here. So we're going to come back to some of those questions shortly. But please do keep them coming in the chat box, because we are collating them to put to our panel later on this evening. So in terms of the next few questions I wanted to talk to you about, and this is particularly fitting on International Women's Day, we do want to talk to you about gender equality and diversity. So there's been lots of recent events over the past year which have placed a spotlight on what companies are doing towards achieving greater equality and inclusion. But it still remains the case that men, especially cis white men, predominantly dominate the top ranks of business, and they're more likely to receive investment for their startups. From your own lived experiences, can you speak on your experience and observation of gender diversity and inclusion in business? Emily, if I could go to you on that one, please.
Sure. So obviously I'm coming from a design background first and foremost, which, depending on the sector you're in, can be very female heavy, actually. But in my early day lived experience in my career, it was quite interesting because I worked on a team of pretty much 100% female designers, but we were managed by a man. So it was a situation where it was, very much a girl tribe on the day-to-day, but then we had a man overseeing everything we did and making all the final decisions. So it was a very interesting dynamic. And then, above him, most of the people he was then reporting to or was a peer amongst were also men. So it was just a very kind of interesting situation. I'm not sure, there were times where it was challenging for different people on the team, but it was something we were all very aware of. And I think that even in industries and sectors that can be predominantly female at times, or in certain regions or places in the world, that still happens, that usually at the top, or a lot of the times, there's still a man kind of managing, overseeing. So from my lived experience, that's been interesting. I didn't necessarily see it as too much of a challenge, but was very aware of it, and saw how it definitely affected how some of my other peers interacted, made decisions, how they stood up for themselves, how they fought for themselves for promotions and comp increases. So it definitely impacted the way that females were thinking and the dynamicism of the team and us reporting to our superiors. And I would say now moving into a different sector in interiors and trying to start something on my own, it's been fascinating as well to see sometimes, again, how many teams are managed by men, how many companies have men sitting at the top. Even things like we were recently searching for photographers, and how a lot of successful, well-promoted photographers in the interior and architecture industry are men. So it's interesting to see because we're working with a lot of people who are more self-employed, so it's not necessarily the same structure all the time of having these deep hierarchies, whether it's from a social structure, more academic institutions or large corporations. We're working with a lot of small companies and individuals, but we still see a lot of men being promoted heavily or at the most successful levels.
And Michelle, what is your view on it through your lived experience, and if there's anything picking up on what Emily said that you can relate to at all?
Yes, indeed, there are some aspects of what Emily said that resonates with me. But even generally, when I think of what happens in St. Lucia, unlike many other parts of the world, our construct, our context is probably a bit different. It's very likely that at the helm of any organization or big business in St. Lucia, it's very likely that the head is going to be a woman. So if you look around our government institutions and our various ministries, the majority of permanent secretaries, and these are the heads in all of the ministries, are women. The staff, the majority of the staff is women. However, when we look at other sectors, when you think of the, say, finance, for example, the financial sectors, we will note that women, there are challenges when women need to get funding or financing for their various for businesses or anything that they wish to do. Though we are quite willing to accept, because in our country we have pretty much accepted women being at the helm of any organization, because quite apart from being at the top of ministries and their own businesses, we have a number of the various sector agencies or sector associations. Say, for example, our Hotel and Tourism Association, our Commerce, Department of Commerce Association, the Manufacturers Association. The chairpersons of those organizations are women. And so it's not unthinkable to find women at the top. But the challenge that we have in some areas, for one, accessing financing. It's easier if you go to a financial institution as a man and request funding for whatever it is that your business, it could be your business or personal stuff. And the women tend to leave the financial institutions feeling less than to some extent, because the process seems to be a bit more difficult. In my own experience, I remember facing a financial institution for some funding for a project. And I was asked, do you have a partner? Are you going to be doing this alone? And I was taken aback. I felt like, I say, are you discriminating against single women? And so this is one of the challenges that we have. But we note in various other sectors in our country, our school system is heavily populated with teachers as our instructional leaders and our principals. So throughout our society, we note that women are holding prominent positions, but there are a few sectors. Say, for example, the armed forces, such as the police force, the fire service, though our women in those spheres have excelled, but they are yet to break that glass ceiling in terms of having a woman police commissioner. Within our government as well, in politics, this is another area that our women are not, well, I know most of the world standard is, they speak of 30% parity for women, but this has not been attained in that sphere locally. And I don't think it has to do with the fact that they're women, but maybe the choice that our women make in terms of, do I really want to go into this political thing? Is this something for me? What does it mean in terms of me managing my life, my career, my family, and everything else? So it's not something that's barred to women, because St. Lucia is one of those countries in the world where we've had a woman governor general, and she sat for just about 20 years in that position. But we've never had a female prime minister, never had a female commissioner of police or chief of the fire service. So generally, women are accepted, holding down positions, being at the head of organizations, but there are still some challenging areas for us that we are yet to be able to get our foot in and to be able to make the kinds of strides that we would expect women to make in the sectors.
And to pick up on what you've just said there, Michelle, although you've acknowledged there is a way to go, particularly with certain sectors, where you've said in some ways in St. Lucia it's been fairly good to have, lots of female representation at the top of organisations. Do you have any thoughts on why it has gone well in some areas?
I think for us locally, it's probably stems from our education system, I would say. And I really don't know where the genesis of all of this is, but you would know, but it has been observed that in our school system, from early childhood to tertiary level, the majority of the role models in there are teachers. So a young man, a young boy or young girl gets into school, and of course the principal is a teacher, is a female. The class teacher is a female. The person who does the extracurricular activities, the musician, the PE teacher, is female. So it's pretty much being nurtured into accepting females in these kinds of positions. So I think that's what makes it more acceptable to us. Though, of course, there are areas where you would find that there is a bit of a challenge. And maybe we can ask ourselves too, why aren't our men aspiring or moving in the same direction or at the same speed as our women? in all of those spheres. And it probably has to do maybe with the economic priority, because women would tend to go through the traditional means. You get out of school, you continue going to school, you attain a degree, you get qualified, you move into the jobs, and you get promoted through the ranks. And I think men, in some instances, don't see the academic route as being the one that's going to get them the kind of success that they want. So they would move out into the fields where they can get the practical experiences, doing the stuff, and earn the money right there. So for us, I think maybe it starts from as to what obtains in our education system, where from a very early age, you recognize that the person who is responsible for leading and managing you, the person who's at the helm, is most likely going to be a female.
Thank you for that extra insight. There's some really interesting things being picked up there, and I can see the questions that are coming in related to that. So I'm going to move on, and I've also heard that Marwa will, if she can't join us in the next few minutes, then we might see her back at the end for the question and A for anybody who might be wondering. So the next thing I'd like to ask you both is did you ever face circumstances due to being a woman that made you, question if going into business was the best option for you? I guess, did you ever have any self-doubt because of being female about starting up your own business? And if I could go to you, Emily, please.
So I think I've had times where I've had feedback or mentors speak to me, or maybe pitch in front of someone, whether it's just to kind of get a bit of feedback on the business concept and plan, or if it was actually competitions and pitching for funding. And I think at times I wasn't consciously aware of it, but if I was speaking to women, I always had a different level of confidence than if I was presenting and speaking to men. And so I think I've learned a lot in the last 2 years about myself that subconsciously it affects the way that I have my own confidence. If I have a bit of imposter syndrome in front of men more so than women at times, and recognizing that imposter syndrome as a young female trying to embark on a business is a very real thing, and especially being someone who's never properly studied it, it is a bit intimidating at times. And if you walk into a room full of men to pitch to versus a room full of women, for me personally, it just sets a completely different scene. And learning that about myself was a great eye-opening experience. And I still don't fully understand the depths of it on a psychological level. But I think imposter syndrome as a female is something in business, and kind of working your way up in business as well, because historically for decades and centuries, in many parts of the world, men have dominated society. And so I think it's just the repercussions of that and the longevity of, generations perpetuating that naturally have given women in the way we think and how we approach situations a different way of framing it sometimes. So I think that it's a fascinating topic to think about because of the psychological aspects of it. And I've had a lot of interesting conversations with other mentors who are females about this. And they have really made me recognize that one of my weaknesses trying to start a business is being a female with imposter syndrome. And it's not necessarily because I'm a female, but I think that plays a part in it. So that's been an interesting challenge.
Thank you for that, Emily. And Michelle, how about you? Any obstacles because of being a woman that you felt along your journey to success?
Actually, no, I can't say that there have been any, because growing up, there was never any occasion or any instance when I felt that this is not something that I wanted to do or something that is open to me as a woman. I started off quite apart in meteorology, and meteorology is a field at the time which was very heavily dominated by men, and I was probably at that time only the third woman in St. Lucia who would have gone into that field. And I recognized, and probably that's one of the reasons why I left, not because it was so heavily male, but of course, the majority of persons more senior to me were male, and wanting to do something else and move on and to give myself the opportunity for upward mobility caused me to leave the Met Office. But it's not because of anything or in any instance feeling as if I did not fit in at all, because I think I was pretty much well able to fit in and to carry my job on competently. And so for me to, in other instances, if I found myself on occasion having to represent my ministry, my departments, both locally, regionally, internationally as well. And on no occasion have I felt as if I feel that I've always been treated with respect and accepted as a professional in my field. Of course, there have been occasions when misogyny has reared its ugly head, and males do not wish to always take directives from a woman. But these instances have been in the minority. I remember once traveling internationally to a conference which was attended by predominantly males. And for some part of it, I was pretty much ignored. But then I recognize it's probably the culture of that part of the world that I had attended. But for the most part, I would say that my views, opinions on a professional level are sought after locally in terms of what has to be done. And I feel respected by my peers, by my colleagues, both male and female. For the most part, I've had great acceptance among my staff, though, of course, the majority of them are female. But in relation to my relationship with the males in my department, they accord me the respect as a woman. But I don't think there's been any instance when I have felt that I shouldn't be doing this, or I can't do this, or this is a position that should be held by someone else. This has not been my experience at all.
And that's really positive to hear. And then likewise, Emily, I think many people can relate to imposter syndrome, and that's something that we hear a lot of discussion around. So we'll probably have some more questions to pick up on that a bit later. The next thing I'd like to ask is that some workforces are overwhelmingly male. And the insurance marketplace Lloyd's of London, which is over 330 years old, recently set a quota of women making up a minimum of 35% of leadership positions within the insurance and brokers marketplace. And Michelle, I know you touched on this sort of putting a figure on diversity quotas earlier. So I'm going to come to you first on this, Michelle. Is putting an arbitrary number on gender equality doing enough?
Could you just repeat the question? I missed a part of it.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of companies, this one in particular, Lloyd's of London, has recently set a quota of women should make up the minimum of 35% at Lloyd's of London. They want that quota to be met of women representing the workforce there in leadership positions. So on that's just one example, but I know that lots of companies have these kind of quotas in place for what percentage of their workforce they want to see as females in leadership positions. And do you think that, I guess many of us might think that that's an important thing to have in place, a policy to have in place. In some ways, there's an argument that that's quite an arbitrary figure. It's perhaps not enough. What are your thoughts on that?
Indeed, I would ask, why not 50%? Why stop at 30? How was that figure determined? And I know, yes, if you listen to all of the conversation of the chatter in the gender circles, they do speak of parity at 30%. But I'm thinking this is something that's, given the construct in some parts of the world where women are very much marginalized, the thinking is that attaining 30% parity would be a giant leap in some instances. if I look at what happens locally for me, in a number of instances, a number of sectors, we have way surpassed the 30% in terms of having women in managerial and leadership positions. But of course, the other sectors are below 30%. But the question is, why stop at 30? Why limit it in terms of, if we're talking equality, then 30% really doesn't cut it, but it probably might represent strides to be taken in some areas, in some parts of the world. It's a target that women in those parts of the world where they seem to be marginalized, or something to attain, a target to be reached. And it signifies hope in some instances.
Thank you, Michelle. And Emily, what are your thoughts on those quotas that companies have?
I think my initial instinct agrees heavily with Michelle that why not 50? But I think it's important to think about the context of maybe where people are starting from or organizations are starting from, and that if 30 to 35% is their stepping stone, their first mark to hit, you have to start somewhere. So I think that it's important to maybe know the context of what that means for that organization or institution. But definitely agree that to reach true equality, that what's the point in putting an arbitrary number if it doesn't reflect what the population is like. So I think understanding the context of each situation and each target and goal will help us, but we should always push it, especially from the female perspective, to make it truly 50-50.
And just drawing on that a little bit further, have either of you encountered any outstanding exemplary examples of how organisations have really tried to strive for a gender balance across their leadership roles? Michelle?
I think in many instances, we focus a lot on training in terms of developing a capacity within our workforce in a number of organizations, and it's equal opportunity for both men and women to take up the training opportunities that have been provided to them. So for us, I note locally, this is an area of emphasis in terms of ensuring that training, also education, education is important, and there are no boundaries in terms of what our women can do for attaining an education. And so all of the opportunities that are presented to our males are also presented to our females.
Thank you. Emily, anything to add to that at all?
I don't think so at this time, no.
Great. So the next question is that, I guess it's what do you think can be done to remove the barriers to women, progressing to board level roles, executive leadership roles? And again, I know you've both touched on this a bit, but if I could go to you first, Michelle, please.
What could be done to get women to break the glass ceiling, say in the boardroom, and those are the institutions that seem to be traditionally male held? I think over time, it has to do with, sometimes people think that women need to prove themselves, and I don't hold that view. I think too that our work ethic, our level of professionalism, our knowledge should be allowed to speak for itself. We have noted though that this culture of the old boys school, which seems to exist, especially for older generations of male, as over time it's been eroded. And I'm thinking that the current generation, of males are a bit more accepting. And so I think over time there is going to be greater acceptance of women moving into those traditional areas, those areas traditionally held by men. But I think it has to do to some extent with having some mindset change in some parts of the world to recognize that women can contribute. There's value added in what we bring to the table. Also, the work of all of the gender organizations internationally in terms of the advocacy that's been done on behalf of women. I think this is a good place to start as well, because it really promotes and provides a platform for women and the work and what they do and the roles that they can play. So I think we can start looking in that direction in terms of having our women to feature more prominently and to be able to make the strides in those traditionally, well, traditionally male career areas.
Thank you. And over to you, Emily.
I guess thinking a bit contrastly in my own experiences, being more on the small business side of things and less institutional, that I think from a community standpoint, that thinking about education and how we interact in smaller groups in society, as well as how we think about education, is a huge opportunity to remove those barriers. And there, for decades, there's been a lot of work being done at an institutional level. So continuing to have those conversations on a small scale on a day-to-day basis, I think, has such huge power to shift mindsets in a ripple effect kind of way. So I think that kind of at a grassroots perspective, like not forgetting that the power of that can be quite instrumental in affecting change long term.
And for those of us in today's event who don't identify as a woman, how would you want them to be an ally? Do you have a good example of allyship that people could take away with them? Michelle, over.
That's an interesting question. And of course, we don't want persons who don't identify as women to feel that they are being discriminated against or they're marginalized, because just as women and men and persons who identify as different gender or different, there is a place in terms of what they do. I wish persons would consider what people bring to the table in terms of their value added, and instead of looking at things strictly from a gender through gender lens. And so there is a place at the table for all persons, be it male, female, or others who identify differently. Because at the end of the world, I think at the end of the day, we're about developing a society, a world that is more inclusive, and that is more embracing of change and differences. And definitely that's a good demographic for us to want to partner with and work together with towards advancing that cause.
Thank you, Michelle. And Emily, do you have any good examples of allyship or advice to give to those who don't identify as women who are here today?
I'm not sure if I would think about it as advice or examples necessarily, but my perspective on this, and again, in a general sense of inclusion, is to be self-aware and always be striving to increase your awareness of yourself in any interaction with a human or in different situations. Am I approaching a situation with a bias or a prejudice? Am I treating everyone the same, whether it's in regards to critiquing someone's work, interacting with them, communicating with them, and just continuing to make sure that you strive for kind of engagement, communication at an equal level, regardless of who the person is.
Thank you. There's some really valuable insights shared there. We have got sort of one more section, if you like, of questions, and I'm going to put we open it to the floor, and I can see I've got another screen next to me here, and there is loads and loads of questions that are coming in, so I'm really eager to get to those. So the sort of last questions from me that I'd like to ask are that a lot of the students and recent graduates who are here with us on this talk tonight will be trying to develop an arsenal of skills and experiences. On a day-to-day basis in your work, what would you say are the most used and important skills to get things done and be successful? Michelle, please.
I would think to be successful as you consider moving into business or whatever pathway that you choose, it's important to surround yourself with the right people, and not necessarily the right friends, but I think in terms of business, get the experts, surround yourself with the experts. So for example, you may decide to open up a business, but you have a passion for the actual work of the business. You're the artist, you're the creative in this business. However, you require accounting skills and marketing skills. I would advise you to surround yourself with the experts and let other persons do those areas that are just not your forte. It's important to build and leverage your network, because this is how you are going to build up your own empire. This is how you're going to get you're going to be surrounded by persons with good advice, not only for the advice aspect of it, but also in terms of having persons that you can, as a good support system, persons who can help you to build your business. And I think key to all of this is being an effective communicator. And it's not only about communicating orally, but also in terms of your presentation, in terms of how you present your documents, whatever is being submitted, how you speak, the kinds of presentations that you make, how you appear to persons. So this whole communication, verbal and non-verbal cues, all of those things are important. And it's necessary if you're going to create a good first impression of yourself and of your business.
Thank you. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't see you anymore, Michelle. But I'm gonna move to Emily, and then hopefully it might just be my computer. This is the joy of online events and relying on Wi-Fi all round. But Emily, if I could go to you, please, for that question.
Sure. So obviously I'm in a very different stage to my career in business compared to Michelle. So I think I'm much closer still to what it's like to be a student, have that mindset, and I'm still transitioning from those initial skills I had working towards being a successful businesswoman. And so on a daily basis, I'm recognizing that I still need to learn new skills. But I would say that when you have the opportunity to be a student and you have access to the university as an institution, all the resources that you have, that take advantage of every department and kind of training, skill development sessions that they offer, because when you leave the university structure, you won't have access to those things in that way kind of for free anymore. So that you have an arsenal right there at your university, and definitely take advantage of it. And I think specifically learning how to confidently present yourself and your ideas, as Michelle said, is incredibly important. That if you have to be able to sell yourself and sell what you want to do. And so presenting and selling are very important skills in business, essentially, because no one else can do it for you. And if it's your idea, you have to sell it to someone else before they join your team. And if you can't convince other people, you can't be successful. And I think, again, self-awareness is another thing. So coming back to learning your strengths and weaknesses. So figure out what you're not good at and try to develop those skills as much as you can. Or as Michelle said, find someone else who's brilliant at it and just accept what you're not going to be good at, and recognize what's worth outsourcing because it's not within your skill set or your strengths or your interests. And being able to identify that can be incredibly helpful so that you're making the most use of your own time and resources. And as someone who didn't study business, I would say learn accounting, learn finance, because if you're going to be in business, you have to understand those first and foremost. You have to be able to build a successful financial model, because that's the heart of creating any business. So even though it seems like it's not fun and you might not want to be good at it, if you can't do it, you can't be successful.
I think it's really reassuring to hear you both say that it's okay if you can't do absolutely everything. And I think that's really true when you're leading a business or you're at the helm of an organization. You can't possibly know everything about, everything. So surrounding yourself with those people and people who can support you, I think is a really important takeaway. I've also heard that Marwa should be back on the call. So Marwa, are you there and can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes. Hello, Marwa. Hi. Can you
Yeah,
hear
hi.
me? Can you hear me
Yes,
okay?
yes, finally.
Oh, thank you
Finally,
so
I'm here.
much. Thank you so much for joining us. And this is just the nature of online events. It's
Yeah.
just how it is with the Wi-Fi and intermittent issues. But you're here, and that's the main thing. So I wonder if I could just put this question to you. And I don't know if you heard me ask it to Michelle and Emily, but the question is, a lot of our students and recent graduates who are here tonight are looking to develop a real arsenal of skills and experiences. So, Marwa, what would you say are the most used and important skills that you have to utilize in your job?
Yeah, I've heard Emily mention something that came to my mind as a student. Yes, we did have facilities that in our universities. So I think we have to use it now. And plus, I think learning the boring skills, if I can call them, like learning these like using PowerPoint, using Figma, for example, for me, from my experience, I'm not a tech person, so I have no idea about tech, how to design things. So now I'm learning the boring skills like designing a website from Figma. If you have a chance to learn these small things, go ahead and learn them. And also, you have to think about your weakness and strengths. As a human beings, we have strengths in some things, and we don't have anything from others. So if you can just highlight the things that you feel you have no enough information about this and start to learn, this will definitely help.
Thank you so much, Marwa. And I'm gonna go straight to you again, Marwa, with the next question. Now that you're here, so we're often told that it's not what you know, but who you know. So Marwa, first, could you please give us your views on this and how mentoring or your network has played a role in your career?
Like when you start a journey, you don't think that you're gonna end it this way. You don't realize the weakness and the struggle they're gonna face. And you don't expect the knowledge that you're gonna gain through the journey. And from my own experience, like I have never thought about tech and how to deal with technology, but now I have like a good knowledge and background. So yeah. So learning is the main thing in the business journey, actually.
And Michelle, what are your views on the whole, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and how beneficial has your network and who you know been to you?
This is very important, especially in terms of the mentoring and the coaching aspect of things. As young budding entrepreneurs, persons that you're just starting off in business, there's no need to reinvent the wheel in some areas. There are persons who have already gone ahead of you. And it's important to tap into that already available resource. In some countries, you have like youth business trusts, and these trusts provide you with a mentor who's going to guide you through your entire business process. Like you could start off with your business plan, and they coach you, help you go, recognize, because sometimes you start off with a brilliant idea. And I think that's how businesses start off. You have this wonderful idea, but is it something that can be commercialized? Is it something that, that can become a big business or a business for you? And being able to have persons who can mentor and coach you through this process is very important. So, of course, there is merit to not who you, what is it? It's who you know. No, it's not who you know, but who, whatever it is.
It's who you know, what you know. Yeah.
Right. Yes. It's important who you know and who's willing to work with you as well, and to get the right synergy between yourself and your mentor. Because sometimes we develop those kinds of relationships, those partnerships, or we're thrust into engagements with persons that we don't really gel with, It could be a matter of age difference. It could be a matter of skill sets that are just not aligned. There's no cohesion. So you get somebody who's on your wavelength, somebody who's probably in the same industry that you're in, and to build that kind of a support system and that mentor and have that kind of coach to guide you through the process. I think that's important. Thank you. And Emily, what's your thoughts on the whole? It's not what you know, it's who you know, and has mentoring and your network played an influence in your career to date?
Oh, I agree completely that networking is instrumental in being successful as in any type of organization, as any individual. That you need a team of people around you that you trust to give you advice, whether you're, doing something on your own or you're in a massive conglomerate yourself. It doesn't matter. You need to have mentors, advisors, coaches, people that you trust. And I think having multiple perspectives as well is really important. That, just having someone to reaffirm your own thoughts isn't what we mean by networking either. It's a matter of having safe spaces to go to with multiple skill sets, multiple levels of experiences from many different industries, kind of giving you a full scope that you don't have from your own lived experience or knowledge base is incredibly useful, especially the younger you are, the less education you have. And I think touching on the bit about what you know, my personal thoughts and experience on that are you learn and forget skills and information throughout your entire life. I think a mentality and way of thinking is always more important as an individual than what you actually know as well, because it allows you to grow and change and adapt. And that way, as you experience new people, new information, you can always move forward or absorb and grow. And I would say I struggled with the networking aspect because I was very shy. I would get very nervous going to events, and networking is now one of my favorite things. And I think it's one of the most invaluable experiences you can do if you're trying to be successful or build something on your own. So even during times like this, like find social online network opportunities, meet as many people as you can, because it's amazing how many people and individuals want to give their time and their help and their insight for free, and they just want to chat and meet new people as well. So I think making it a priority is very useful to building a successful career.
I completely agree with Emily, actually. Networking and meeting people, you can exchange knowledge in a very simple way.
And just to add to that discussion, just to add to that thread as well, I want to give an example in terms of me joining the local Toastmasters club. Though I can be shy, well, not shy, I'm a bit introvert, but it does not show, and many people don't even believe that I am when I tell them I'm an introvert. But I went to the Toastmasters club. Of course, it helps improve your communication skills, but it's also a wonderful place to meet a wide variety of people, and it has really extended my network. I could sit at my desk right now and I could call up any one of my colleague Toastmaster friends and say, I'm looking for somebody to do this, or something is happening, or what are your thoughts on this? And there's always somebody at the other end. So it's useful to become part of groups or organizations, and they don't necessarily have to be in your business field, exactly what you're in, but you'd be, as Emily said, it's important to always keep growing and learning. And the diversity in learning always adds value, because you never know. Sometimes you have met somebody, they have said something, and then sometime down the line you're looking to do something and you're like, oh yes, Emily said this, and maybe I could tap into this and I could call this person. So it's important to be part of groups first that are aligned with what you're doing, but also diverse groups as well, because you learn from everywhere.
And I'm actually going to pick up on something you just said there, Michelle. Was it Toastmasters you were referring to? Yeah. So because I'm going to ask now for you each to just summarize any key resources that you recommend for our students and recent graduates before we go into the Q&A. So Michelle, I'll go to you first. So it sounds like Toastmasters is one of them.
Yes, Definitely. If you're looking to improve your leadership skills, your communication and presentation skills, Toastmasters is the place to be. It's an international organization, and I mean, it provides you with opportunities to really develop your skills. Sometimes you find yourself registering for some communication course or program, but this is just a one-off exercise. With Toastmasters, there's always continuous opportunity for you to keep practicing and getting it well, and it's in a very friendly environment. So this is one area that I would encourage persons to consider, especially if you're looking to develop those kinds of skills, especially to build your confidence and communicate effectively and presentation skills. And also, I just lost my train of thought there for a second. Yes, because what was the question again, Laura?
It was, any other resources that you'd recommend? So Toastmasters, and we've popped, my colleague Hayden has just put a link to that in the chat box, so everybody can find out even more. Any other resources?
Yes, I touched on earlier on the Youth Business Trust. It's also organization that I think there are many chapters internationally. So this is an area, an organization that young entrepreneurs, startups can tap into. So you could see what's available in your area and become an affiliate, sign up and be part of this, because they provide you with a wealth of information, and not just the information, but they pair you with a mentor, and they provide you with coaching, and they give you some internship opportunities. So you really get to grow. There's the practical side of it and the theoretical side of it. So I would encourage persons to consider the Youth Business Trust as well.
Oh, thank you. There's two brilliant resources there. Marwa, how about you? Are there any resources you would recommend to our students and recent graduates here?
Yes, like supporting the importance of communication. I would suggest some community that we can share as women in business. It's called Allyship. It's a great website that you can join and ask any question. If you have any need, if you need any help in any tech world, you can join the community and drop any question. So Allyship is very, very, very good website. Also, I just knew a website, a startup application called Level Up to empower women. It's really good, and I can't wait to use this platform as well. And the third one is Muslim Maker. It's a good community for Muslims to go and gather and guide each other. So I just recommend these three resources that would help. Yeah.
And right on cue, you'll see that Hayden has added all those links in the chat box for Marwa's resources. And Emily, how about you? What resources would you recommend?
So I'll start with a female-focused one. There's an organization or group called Like-Minded Females. It's a network, and that is one that's worth checking out if you're thinking about the female focus of things. I think in general, we were just discussing networking really heavily, so always looking into things like Eventbrite and Meetup, and searching more for specific industries and interests that you're looking to get into, or when you recognize what your weaknesses are and where you need to find mentors, or you want to learn more. Search for those topics, search for those groups so that you can find something that's very specific to your needs. That's a great way to dive into networking more frequently. There is also an organization that I have started doing called Lunch Club, which is a networking group where you kind of have to be invited in, but then once you're in, it's a matter of you can schedule weekly meetings with people, and they've done a great job over the pandemic moving that online and really pairing you with great people, and I've had an amazing experience on there. So that's one to check out. And then I have to rep the CEC and just say that while you're at the university, I know Marwa and I have both really benefited from the department and the programs there, and personally benefited from the skill development workshops and mentorship that we've received through the CEC. So start at home at the university and take advantage of these opportunities as much as you can.
Thank you so much for that. So on that note, we're going to shortly go to the Q&A session. But just to say to everybody here that at the university, as Emily just picked up on, there are so many resources for you, organised by the Careers and Employability Service and by the Creative Enterprise Centre as well, to support both students and recent graduates who are pursuing careers in business, whether that's through employment or through starting your own business. So all of that information, all of those links, they're all going to be put in the chat box here. So there are stacks of questions that have come in, and so I'm going to kick off. So this is a question to everybody. Somebody has said that I need some advice. I have to take a risk to change from one field to another, and I will be starting with nothing and restarting my education because I want to follow my passion. Do you have any tips or advice on how to make this career change? I'm going to see if any one of the three of you wants to stick your hand up. Just do that. Otherwise, I might just pick on someone, if that's all right. Okay. So I'm going to go to you, Michelle, because you did that, and I think you were just amending your glasses, but I'm going to take that as a hand up. So what advice can you give to somebody who wants to, make a complete career change to follow their passion, but they're starting with nothing?
Sometimes you need to take a leap of faith and recognizing that you are passionate about something. It's important first to plan about it, to plan it, instead of don't just think that passion is all that's required. You have to determine first within yourself whether this is something that you can carry through up until the end. I have many friends who have started out in career areas because their parents thought that it was the best thing for them to do, and so they moved into there looking to, appease their parents. However, recognizing within themselves that this is not what I want to do, this is not going to make me happy. I think that if I move into this area that I'm passionate about, it's going to be more rewarding. So it's always important to go with that aspect of it. But it's also just as important to ensure that you plan for it. So if it means that you're able to restart your education, jump into something else, learn new skills as it relates to what you want to do, that's important as well. And I would encourage you to do it. It was in November. I was home one night. Well, I had a long day at work, and I was just scrolling online, and I came across a video on fluid art. And I figured, what's this? I'm no artist. I'm no creative, unlike Emily, who seems to have that knack. But I figured that was rather interesting. Let me see what I could do with this. And I have since registered a business called a House of Pause, and I'm thinking, this has potential, and I quite like it. Not only does it help me relax on an evening, but it also helps, stimulate your mind, and it's something that I love doing right now. So I would encourage anybody who's willing to make the change to figure it out, plan the course of action necessary, and go for it.
Thank you. That's really empowering advice, and I can't say that I'm as productive when I'm in at home in the evenings, going through Netflix. But thank you for that. So the next question, I'm going to ask Emily this: would you say that you have a balanced life between work and everything else?
Depends on the day. Genuinely. It varies. Sometimes I think I'm quite good at it. All in all, when you're trying to start something, no, I don't think so. I think sometimes you have to be willing to live a bit of an unbalanced life to start something on your own and to make it happen, because when opportunities arise, they usually come quite quickly, and if you don't act and seize the moment, you won't be able to kind of level up in whatever you're doing, or maybe take on a project that will take you to the next level or get you that next client or great review. So I would say it varies from time to time, but not always balanced.
And Marwa, do you have anything to add to that about sort of work-life balance? Do you feel there's balance in your life, lifestyle, work?
Yeah, I think in our journey it's up and down. So yeah, we're gonna feel like it's balanced, and then something will go wrong, and then we're gonna change. But I think the priority for us is our mental health and our like mentally we have to balance this. We have to put our happiness and balanced life as a priority, and seeking to create this balanced life. You cannot guarantee that you're gonna be in one line, but at least just prioritize your mental health. Yeah, that's what I want to add, actually.
No, that's really, really important, that we must, take the utmost care with our mental health. So I think that's a very important message for everybody to take home. Right, so I've got a few very specific questions around gender in the workplace, and that is the first. Which one should we go with first? So what advice would you give to women who have struggled with their health, specifically if it's related to women's issues, and if they feel disadvantaged because of this compared to their male workers? So I'm going to put that to Emily first.
I would say think about it from a human perspective and find someone that you trust in your organization to broach the subject with, I guess. And I know that that's probably very difficult advice, but I think if it's within an organization that you're currently working in, if you don't speak up about it, nothing will change. So you need to find a safe space, and maybe taking a step back and finding someone to talk to outside of the organization first can help you in order to do that. But I think that until it's addressed internally, no one else might be aware of it yet, and so you'll have to find the strength to talk about it internally within the organization to make anything change.
Michelle or Marwa?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Emily. Speak up, mention this, highlight your problem. Otherwise, no one will know you're gonna have this problem. So just speak up, try to change it. It's your right to be working. So yeah.
Great. Thank you very much for that. So the next thing I want to ask is, how do you deal with sometimes being patronized as a woman in business and not letting it bring you down? That's if you had to deal with it. So have any of you felt that you've experienced being patronized in your career journey to date at all? And I know there's some smiles there, but I don't know if that's something that one of you would be willing to talk about, and your advice for dealing with that if you are patronized in the workplace, and maybe not necessarily because you're a woman. Does anyone have anything to offer on that?
I think I could add to that.
Yeah.
I think I could add to that, Laura, by indicating on the occasions, and it has happened to me on rare occasions, but it has happened. But on these occasions, I just let my work speak for itself. As I've indicated, I tend to believe that it's important to always be professional, and I don't take personally some of the emotion that's being directed at me, and I put every effort into ensuring that my work is of a good quality. And so on these instances, I go in, I present, I do whatever it is that I have to do. I do it to the best of my ability, and I don't take personally the opinions or thoughts of other persons, especially if it comes, when persons really want to patronize and be, have that kind of approach towards you, sometimes being as a woman, or just generally because you're the head or the person in charge, the leader, the manager, the supervisor. I just rather let my work speak for itself and continue to operate in a very professional manner.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much for that. So the next question, I'm going to go to you for this one, Emily, because you spoke a little bit about imposter syndrome. And although you've spoken about experiencing it, I think you probably also have some advice on how to tackle it as well. So somebody has asked, how do we tackle our feelings of imposter syndrome in situations? And are there quick ways to turn our minds from allowing that to really get to us?
I think it depends on how much it's affecting you in the moment, but I definitely think it is possible that at the end of the day, it boils down to being comfortable with who you are and confident in what you know and what you don't know, and being happy to admit that you're coming from a certain background and experience and education level, and that has made you who you are, and you should not feel sorry for it in any way. And if you have been invited into a room or have worked your way into a room somehow, that you've earned your spot at that table, and to enjoy it, take advantage of it, and that letting your emotions and your own mind overpower and take advantage of that opportunity isn't worth it at the end of the day. And it's much easier said than done. I'm speaking from personal experience. But trying to come to terms with who you are and what you have to bring into the room, that there's a reason that you're there. And just remember that every time you're starting to struggle a little bit, that someone has thought you were worthy to have a seat at the table, and sit there boldly and strongly. And if you make a fool of yourself, it's okay, because most people do, and learn from it and move on.
Definitely. And so the next thing I'd like to ask is, it's about age in the workplace. Somebody has asked, do you think age matters? Experience is something that gets tossed around a lot when it comes to age, which scares me as a 20-year-old who wants to jumpstart on my career. So, Marwa, if I could come to you first for that question, please.
Age never, it doesn't matter how old are you, young, old, it doesn't matter. As long as you have a goal, I have passionate of doing something new, just go for it. Don't think about any obstacles, especially age. Age is just number, and you determine your age by the experience. So you learn, you take risk, you make mistake, and you grow. So it doesn't matter the age.
And Michelle, if I could go to you on that one next, please.
The same question? Is that what you're saying, Laura?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Oh, okay. For me, age is just a number. It's really about what you bring into the table and how confident you feel within yourself, being able to deliver what the expectations are. Nobody is expecting a 20-year-old to have the experience of a 40-year-old person on the job. But what employers or managers really like is to see that kind of attitude that allows you to want to learn and grow. So we're expecting a 20-year-old to come to the job with the mindsets and a sound work ethic that allows for growth. And so it's not about your age, but really what you're bringing in. The ability, the willingness to learn, to grow, to add value to the organization, and also for yourself in terms of what you're hoping to get out of the organization as well.
Thank you, Michelle. And Emily, if you could also answer that question, please.
I think acknowledging levels of experience is more important than acknowledging the age of a person, because someone could have made a career shift and be much more mature and have less experience or less knowledge than another individual. So just being open-minded to a person and their experience and their strengths and successes, I think is what's most important. But when you're young specifically, be respectful of people and acknowledge that, as a 20-year-old, how much you know and how little experience you may or may not have. And I think it's great to be confident and sure of yourself and aware of your strengths. But if you're standing in front of someone who might have a lot more experience than you, remember that when you're speaking to them, because I think it can go a long way, and how we respect people that have helped forge the path before us.
Thank you for all of those really, valuable comments there. The next question is, what would be the best advice that you could give to someone that is thinking of starting their own business? So this could be quite a big question, but perhaps it's one sort of single piece of brilliant advice that you would give to somebody thinking of starting their own business. Marwa, please.
Yes, one advice. I think like you have to know that it's a long journey and you're gonna learn a lot. You're gonna make mistakes, but it's okay. You're gonna learn, like out of this you're gonna learn. Just don't give up because you're gonna face lots of obstacles and down feelings. So if I'm gonna advise someone, I just like don't give up. It's okay. It's normal to make mistakes. Just push yourself and also focus on what you are doing. Ignore any negative thoughts that come to my mind, to your mind. What else? And enjoy your journey, because otherwise you're gonna crash and like you're gonna like crush yourself, and that you don't want to end up this way. So just enjoy. It's a journey. We learn. We make mistakes. It's okay. So that's the main thing that I want to share.
Thank you. Because we've only got a couple of minutes left, and there's still a few more questions, so I'm going to go to another one, and that is, well, it's actually, what are the main skills for women in the workplace, and what do you advise a new graduate looking for a job? So again, it's quite a big question, but Michelle, I wonder if you could offer any thoughts on that. What are the main skills for women in the workplace, if indeed you think there is particular skills that as women we need to be perhaps more aware of? Or advice?
I think they probably are. Being women, the nature of the things that we do and get involved in requires us to be very organized. And I think this is a quality or a trait that any woman wanting to get into business or looking, for a career on a career path needs to be mindful of. It's important to be organized because it means that you have to balance a lot. You have to balance work. You probably have to balance school sometimes. There are some women who are single parents, some women who are minding or looking after their parents. They come from an extended family, so there's the burden of care that's placed upon them as well. So there's a lot of balancing to do it, and it can be a very fine act to balance. So I would encourage persons to be, ensure that they're organized in terms of being able to prioritize, the things that they have to do.
And I can see some nods there. So I'm going to go to you, Emily, and then Marwa, just to finish up on that question of whether there's any specific sort of skills or advice that you would give to women who are, entering the workplace to get off to a really successful start. Emily first.
I think I'm going to go back to the same of identify your own strengths and weaknesses, and take recognition of who you are as an individual, to allow that to shine through so that you can focus on what you're doing well and what you need to improve in order to succeed in whatever role, responsibilities, or career that you're embarking on. And think about any skills that you may have as a female and what that means from a personality standpoint and how you can use it to your advantage. I think a lot of times when we talk about females in the workforce, we feel like we're always fighting. And so I think taking the perspective of thinking about how it can make you a better employee over a male perspective in certain situations, or reacting to certain occurrences or conversations, use it to your advantage. And just try to be kind to everyone yourself, and recognize that how we treat people says a lot about who we are, and can actually affect your success quite a bit.
Absolutely. And finally, to you, Marwa.
Yeah, I agree what ladies said, and I'm gonna add negotiation skills, because sometimes women are more emotional than men. So negotiation, maybe this is something that we need to focus on to convince people to join. Sometimes you have to be very serious and strict when you decide who is in. Yeah, so I think this is one thing that to highlight.
There's so much more that I'd love to read out, but we've come to the end of our time, and I know that everybody has got very sort of busy schedules at the moment. So thank you so much to all three of you for your time this evening. And Marwa, I'm really glad that we were able to hear from you as well after the technical issues at the start. There was some invaluable advice and wisdom, and also some brilliant resources which you've shared, and they have all been shared in the chat box here, and there will be a follow-up email going out to all of the to everybody who's attended here this evening, with all those resources listed, as well as some university support through the Creative Enterprise Centre and the Careers team that is there for you to help you with your business endeavours and starting your own businesses. So that is it. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening.
Thank you very
much. Thank you very much, Laura.
Bye.
You're welcome. Bye. Bye.
Bye.